Welcome back to another great episode of the Drew Sutton podcast. This is a spotlight episode where we're talking about Paul Boyles. Paul is an executive coach and trainer who is a highly talented human resources professional with a broad range of experience in manufacturing, service industries, hospitality, and government. Paul holds a BS in business management from the University of Scranton. During his long career in HR, he was part of a group of HR leaders who founded SHRM, uh, the SHRM affiliated chapter in South Jersey, and has served on the board of the Loudoun Monroe HR Association as a board member and president. He has volunteered time to assist with the Blunt Partnership Success in 90 program. As an executive coach and trainer, he specializes in leadership development for all levels of business and organizations. With over 35 years in practical experience, Paul's passion to help others grow is a clear benefit of working with him. He possesses professional HR certifications from SHRM and SPHR. Additionally, he is a certified John Maxwell coach. He's a speaker, a trainer, and a certified trainer for the John Gordon Company. He resides in Maryville with his wife, Patricia, and they have one daughter, Alana, along with one grandchild. Well, welcome to the show, Paul.
Thank you so much, Drew. It's good to be here.
Yeah. We had a serendipitous meeting. I think we met through a couple of bumps in LinkedIn, which makes me excited because that's what LinkedIn is for.
Absolutely. I love it.
I think I butchered a couple of these HR organizations. So SHRM, what does that stand for?
Society for Human Resources Management. Yeah.
SHRM.
You normally say SHRM is the general.
There we go. SHRM. Yeah, awesome. And then the other one, SPHR?
Yeah, Senior Certified Professional in Human Resources.
Very excellent. So, welcome to the show. I didn't quite prep you on this, but everybody that comes through the show has to go through the gauntlet of questions. Are you ready for some questions?
Let's try.
Okay. Are you a coffee or a tea person?
Coffee, absolutely. First thing in the morning, it's a must.
It's a must. Looking like a true HR professional. I appreciate that. Okay, Pepsi or Coke?
Coca-Cola, but I don't drink it anymore.
You don't drink it anymore?
I stopped.
All right, when you go on vacation, are you the spontaneous one or the planned one?
The planned one. It's got to be planned. My wife, spontaneous.
All right. So then does that make you a luxury hotel person or like a glamping type person?
More luxury, definitely.
I can see that. What was your favorite vacation then?
That's a great question and a tough one. I did a trip to Italy on my own myself. I was there for work, for business, and ended up playing tourist for a couple of days at the end of the week, basically. So that's one that's really very memorable. Even though it was by myself, it was a great experience. I got to see some incredible things.
Where did you go to Rome or?
I went to Florence. I spent some time in Florence. I did a tour of Tuscany, which was incredible, and ate great meals every single day. Unbelievable.
I got to go to Italy, I guess about 5 years ago now. And I went to Turin, which is right below the Alps, it's like right the France-Germany Alps section. And I flew in and I was like, first of all, I have to apologize to anybody I've ever mocked in the past. Jet lag is a thing. Like I was like, you guys are just wusses. No, it's a real thing. But I was in Turin, and Turin, I don't know if it was this way where you were at, but Turin, like the culture is you like just walk up and down the streets and then you swing in and you buy a little shot of espresso. And in Turin, they have this thing called a beacherini, which is like, if you can imagine chocolate pudding, except like espresso pudding, but like liquid, like so not quite gelled, but it's like really, really thick. Oh my goodness. I spent hundreds of dollars on little beacherinis.
I could easily see that. I really could. Yeah, the food was incredible. What a great experience.
Yeah, no, Italy's amazing. I would go back in a minute.
Same here.
So, okay. So you said you went there for work. Who were you working with for at the time?
I worked for a international family-owned business, a tile company called Del Conca. Well established, well regarded in the industry. and they had decided they were going to build their first U.S. operation here in Tennessee. And I was their first employee here in the U.S. So before we actually even broke ground, they decided it was a great idea for me to come over there, spend a week in the factories over there. They have 3 factories over there, in the distribution center, see the operation, learn a little bit about the business, and get to know them a little bit as well. So it was a great experience. They're actually headquartered, and this is a little trivia thing, in an independent republic inside of Italy called San Marino,
Okay.
which is the world's oldest independent republic, basically. So fascinating and beautiful. This mountaintop thing this castle sits on top of this mountaintop. Beautiful facility, just incredible, just incredible.
Very cool. I'm kind of stunned. San Marino. So are they one of those like little tiny countries that shows up in the Olympics?
Yeah, yes, they do. Absolutely,
Oh,
absolutely.
that's fantastic.
And frequently they are a Jeopardy question of some sort. I've seen probably 3 or 4 times they've been on a Jeopardy question related to that. So
Oh,
yeah,
that's cool.
fascinating, fascinating.
So, how did you get hooked up with them?
Well, it was kind of an interesting story there, and I'll be brief. But the company I had worked for prior to that had decided they were going to close and consolidate the operation here. Um, so we worked closely with the local economic agency to help place the people that were going to lose their jobs, et cetera. And I built a relationship with them, and I got a call one day. I was still at my former employer because we were closed, but I was boxing up employee files. And the question was, hey, can you be down here for an interview at 12 o'clock today? There's some folks that want to meet you. And I said, I'm not dressed appropriately. And she said, well, I think it's important you be here if you can. I ran home. I put a suit and tie on, went down for this interview. Didn't know who I was interviewing with. They couldn't tell me because they hadn't announced yet that they were going to build here. And walked into this room, and there were 8 or 9 folks there. And very quickly, I realized they were Italian, all of them from Italy. Broken English, right? I left the interview and I said to my wife, I don't think they understood half of what I said, and I'm not sure I understood half of what they said. But
That sounds like a successful interview, actually.
it was kind of crazy. It was kind of crazy. And shortly thereafter, had an offer and decided, yeah, that was the group I wanted to be with. It was exciting, green company, brand new facility, breaking ground. I mean, it was something I'd never done in my career, so it was great.
There are so many fun ways we could take this story. I love this, but kind of the implication that I hear from this is your work shutting down the original company is what that relationship is what built this opportunity, right?
Absolutely. As crazy as that is, right? It was hard to do, shutting down a facility and everything else. And these folks had been employed there 20, 30 years, some of them even longer.
Yeah.
We wanted to make sure we did everything we could. So we had this relationship with this economic agency, and they helped us with, all the outplacement of folks, et cetera. And that was the connector, that relationship I had built with their team there. She reached out to me and said, hey, bring your resume. These people want to meet you.
So here's what I love about that story is we live in a world of funnels. We live in a world of sound bites. We live in a world of social media, but it is, and there's all sorts of training you can get on how to seem more authentic. I always get a crack up when I get one of these ads and it's like, build your authenticity. I'm like, I'm already authentic. Like, isn't hacking my personality to seem more authentic? Isn't that the ironic, so, but what you're saying here is that the way you start something and the way you finish something, especially something difficult, that is what really tests your character and it builds the relationships that grow, right?
I agree 100%. And I look at everything, life, work, whatever it might be, you've got to be authentic, genuine, sincere. If you don't care, it's going to come across instantly. It really is. So that's a game changer for me. It's important.
Well, so I'm going to jump off of that real quick. You and I are both John Maxwell certified, which is cool. I think that's maybe one of the reasons that we started getting connected. But the idea of who you are, the law of magnetism, what you are is what you get. Like being authentic is important, is the law of magnetism. Can you think of any other laws that John talks about in any of his books? Any of his catchphrases that really touch you and you're like, man, this is how I want to live my life?
I think there's probably 2 things that come to mind when I think of Maxwell. One is a quote. He talks about everything rises and falls on leadership. And I believe that 100%. You can have a great team, but if you don't have the right leader, that team isn't going to be successful the way they could be or should be. And I think of sports teams, I think of businesses, clients, etc. Perfect example. Or just the opposite. You can have a team that's okay, good performers, they're not great, but with a great leader, they can do incredible things and make significant impact. So I really like everything Rice calls on leadership. I think it's important.
Yeah, no, I'm gonna kind of mix the streams here because I know that you're a John Gordon guy as well.
Yes.
I'm here in Lexington, Kentucky, and the UK baseball team all got the Energy Bus, which is John Gordon's book on positivity. It's like his
Right.
first book. And for the audience here, if you haven't read the Energy Bus, you need to read the Energy Bus. I've read it probably 2 or 3 times. I'm reading it with my 14-year-old boys. There's nothing better. You're having success when the teenagers are like, "Come on, Dad, this is boring."
That's probably true. Absolutely.
Yeah. So to finish the story real quick on the UK ball team, they had their winningest season ever. And ball teams don't change overnight. You get a new cadre of freshmen. So they went from pretty much a losing team to a super successful, like it was above 75% of games that they won. I need to go back and memorize that, but it's all, and they tell you it's all because we read the John Gordon book, The Energy Bus, and we all decided to get on the Energy Bus, and we got rid of negativity, and we all stayed positive, and we all picked up the slack for each other, and we knew that we owed each other. And they had the winningest season in UK's baseball history. So talk to me a little bit about John Gordon. I know that you're into John Gordon.
Yes.
What do you love about him? What are the results that you've seen from him? Just, over to you.
Yeah, it's been a great experience. I read The Energy Bus, I don't even know how many years ago. I couldn't, and have reread it many times since then. It's a great book. I think you're right. It's a must read for anybody, leadership role or not. It's a great book. It really is. And I don't know why, but last April, it kind of stumbled into my LinkedIn feed about a day of development and a certification program over in Charlotte, North Carolina. So I pretty quickly signed up. It was a 2-day event, went over there, and the trainers were fantastic that he had. And he and his wife and his kids were there for the full 2 days. And just as down to earth, humble people as you could ever imagine, right? And during the program, I'll tell you a quick story. He asked, well, how many of you in this room, and there was about 100 of us in this room at that one point, he said, how many of you have received the call from me? And about half the crowd raised their hand, and I didn't. I thought, well, wait a minute, why didn't I get a call? Like, what's going on? And he said, well, for those of you that I haven't called, I will call you. So when you get this number from this area code, take the call. It's me calling you, right? And that was on a Friday afternoon, I think it was, for the second day. And I was, well, he may call, he may not call, whatever it might be. And he and I had talked about some things in conversation during the 2 days. That Monday evening, I get this call on my cell phone, and it's him. It's John Gordon. He says, hey, Paul, this is John Gordon. And I was like kind of shocked and surprised. And, what'd you think of the training? How did it go? What recommendations would you have? And then he talks to me about some things that he and I had spoke to personally and privately about. And that just blew me away.
Right? And I realize, this is not exactly a John Gordon commercial, but it speaks so much to what you were talking about earlier about relationships and about authenticity. That John, I mean, you're just you and I have both been to enough conferences to know the drill, right? They get up on the stage, they give a good show, but not, it's kind of like Johnny Carson. I think it was like he's great on the stage, but he's weird privately. But John you're right. John is the same. He's the same in both, and I think it's super cool.
Yeah, it was a great experience. It really was. The training, the certification has been wonderful. I've used it with a lot of clients so far. And there are some things that they absolutely love, and you can see the impact and the results you're getting just by the reaction in the room when you do an exercise with them, something like that. So it's been a great experience.
So I'm not going to let you get away with just that. That's great. That's like, I know, like I said, I did it with my boys, but they're 14-year-olds, right? So they're just like getting them from the I hate my sister and life in general to don't complain in front of dad because he'll force you to talk about the Energy Bus. Like that, I consider that a win, right? That's a win. But for you, so you work with small businesses. We'll get into that in a bit. tell me maybe one or two of your favorite stories with the John Gordon material, how you came into somebody and you fixed something for them, and then how, because I think the transition, once you engage positivity, the transition's a lot faster than you think. So talk me through that. Give me a couple stories here.
No, I had a client experience. There's one of the exercises that you can do with them as a result of this training, or part of the training, is this how to remove or transform energy vampires, right? These folks that suck life out of your team, out of your workplace, out of your organization, whatever it might be. And we give them, and they really do it themselves as part of the exercise, ways to deal with if it's your boss, if it's a peer, if it's a vendor, outside supplier, or if it's a direct report of yours. So we give them 4 different ways they can tackle these conversations to deal with these energy vampires. And, folks will frequently, they'll stand around the room, and we use 4 flip charts in the room. They will go around and take pictures of every single flip chart, because I want, and someone said, I want this. I'm going to take this home and use it. I'm going to use it with my child, or I'm going to use it with my wife or my husband, or I'm going to use it with my boss. And I really need to make sure I've got this captured. So I know it works. And it's fascinating when I see that. I just love it.
No, that's cool. And that's that's the reason that I do workshops. I know you do workshops, is because you want to give stuff that they can actually use tomorrow, right? Like I have this whole bit I do on ethics training. Like I was forced to sit through ethics training so many times at some of the larger corporations. And it's not that obviously I believe in ethics, Scouts Honor and stuff, but we sit through these ethics training things and you're like, what do I take away from this? Like, doesn't really, kind of reinforces stuff you already knew, but it doesn't really change who you are. Whereas some of the stuff you do, John Maxwell and John Gordon, that stuff really can change who you are at home, who you are at work. I love it. I think that's cool.
No, I agree. There are tools that you walk away with sometimes that you don't realize where or when you're going to use it, right? But you do.
Yeah. Well, I think that's why, I know that the Olympics is getting a little bit further away now these days, but as I was watching the Olympics and I was cheering them on with the kids, you have Simone Biles and you have the swimmers and you have every single one of the people getting a gold medal had a bench full of coaches, right? Yeah. There's you like my daughter's in soccer right now. You hire a coach when you're just learning the game. And then you go through this phase where folks are like, I can do it myself. They don't have a coach for years and years and years, and they struggle and they learn. And then you learn something special, only to discover that it was something that everybody else already knows how to do, right? But the folks that are getting the gold medals, the folks that are at the pro level, they're getting a coach because they want to short circuit that learning cycle. What are some of the learning cycles you've been able to help people short circuit on that have really been impactful for them?
Sure. Yeah. That is probably the reason I got into coaching. 38 years in human resources, long career. Was I perfect? No, I made mistakes. I made screw ups. I did things I shouldn't have done, poor decisions, whatever it might be. And now at this point in my career, if I can take that learning that I had and those experiences and help the next person to make their journey a little bit easier, a little better, a little smoother, short circuit a little bit so they don't have to go through what I went through. That's why I'm here. That's why I do this. And I've seen that happen. I have a client I think of now that good person, really good person, but she wanted to advance to the next level, right? She was long in her career, but she wanted to advance. And we worked on some things, her communication specifically, her style, her delivery, that kind of thing, even her timing, I guess you might say. And 4 months in, she got a nice promotion, so that's what I like. When I have a success like that, it's like, this is the goal. This is why I'm here. Right. And she's so appreciative. She is so appreciative because she said, I know my impact now is different than it was in my last role.
Yeah, you're right. Those are the most rewarding. I was working with a gentleman about 2 years ago when I was deciding that I was going to get into coaching.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, hey, I'm going to call him Craig to protect the guilty here. I was like, hey, Craig, can I try some stuff on you? And he was like, yeah, man, I could use some help. And we worked on program management, and he got a promotion in about the same time period, 3 or 4 months, which is super. That's like lightning quick in an organization.
It's nice, right?
And he just called me up recently and he said, hey, remember that stuff that we worked on, those sessions that we did? I was like, yeah. He's like, I walked them through with some of my the folks that work for me, and they all
Wow.
got promotions. And I was like,
Nice.
that's so
It's
cool.
amazing. That
Because
is nice.
and that, I think that's why we both got into leadership work is when you raise the lid. I think Maxwell calls it the law of the lid. When you raise the lid, not only does the person get a promotion, but everybody under them
Right.
get the promotion. Like not necessarily today, but they get a better boss. They get more development. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So why did you get into this? So you had 35 years success. You were literally hired by the mob. Well, sorry, that's how I wrote it down.
No, 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 no,
You got
not at
these
all.
Italians, international companies sought you out. You did 35 years in HR, and then you said to yourself, I think it's time that I apply all this stuff into coaching. So tell me how you made that transition. Why? How? Talk to me about the transition.
Well, the I guess the how of I had used to coach during my career for myself and for others as well. And he always suggested to me, he said, I think you'd really be good at this. He said, do you ever think about it? I said, no, I'm fine. I love what I do here. It's great. I've got it made. It's a great job. Well, you'd really be good at this. He kept coming at me a little bit.
Mhm.
And in July of 21, and this is a real quick, I digress a little bit. My wife and I both got COVID,
Oh
landed
yeah.
in the hospital for 4 days. She was in
Oh,
for 5 days. So I was flat on my back for 4 days, isolated in a hospital room and 60 some years old. And I thought, okay, what do I want to do with the rest of my life? And I decided it was time to do this. I could launch this business and do it. And when I told my boss, who in Italy via video call, and I said, I'll give you like 4 or 5 months notice. We'll get somebody in and I can show them what I know a little bit and all that. And his first words to me was, no, 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 no. I will be your first client. Sign me up. You come and go as you please with us. You work as many or as little hours as you want, and we'll have a deal here. He wanted me to do that for 3 years. I said, 3 years is too long. I said, let's do a year and then see what happens at the end of the year. So that's exactly what happened. And no
I
regrets, no
I
regrets at
don't
all.
know that there's any better testimony to your character and your skills that your current boss, as you're quitting, agrees to be your first client. I think that's
Yeah, it's
yeah, that's
and they are
cool.
still a client of mine. In fact, I'm going back there in October, November to do some leadership work with the team, which is exciting. I love to be back there. It's not the first time in the 3 years, but it's exciting to be back and see what's happening. So I love it. They're good people. They are good people. I'm telling you.
That's amazing. And what fun to have your client in Italy. That's cool. So I'm going to pull a little bit of a thread here, jump back just to one story.
Sure.
Is when you're working with this client that you were talking about, a lot of times what we do as coaches is we don't fundamentally change who you are. We're not going to come in and
Right.
like teach you how to add 1 + 1. You already are super skilled, right?
Yeah.
In this case, you have an international organization. Um, what folks generally need to go from here to like scaling beyond is generally not a lot. We just need a little nudge, like little tweaks in about 5 or 6 areas. And then all of a sudden we unlock the potential of the organization or the person. Have you seen spots where you've been able to unlock people and watch them really scale besides this young lady?
Yeah, and even with clients, if I do like a group training, for example, and a lot of times clients will have me in for a leadership development series. Come in once a month, do 90 minutes, 2 hours with our folks. And the nice thing about that, I really enjoy, is it's a mix of folks on the spectrum. Some are brand new leaders, some are a little bit more seasoned. Um, and inevitably, I'll either get an email or they'll come up to me afterward or the next month I'm there and say, that tool you mentioned last time, I did that with my team and I want to show you the results. I want to show you what happened. It's like, I
Yeah.
love that. That's exactly what I'm looking for, right? And so how'd the team react? They loved that I even asked them or talked to them about it, right? That's the whole purpose. That's the point of it all.
Yeah. No, I think, and this is what I run into a whole lot is your job as the boss is fundamentally different than the job of the organization. The organization makes tiles, they weave rugs, they make coffee mugs, and thank you to whoever makes coffee mugs. Uh, right? They do a thing, they make a thing, but us as leaders, our job is actually completely different. Our job is to connect with our people. Our job is to develop our people. Our job is to, I say, if you want some R&R, you need to master your R&Rs, which is your roles and responsibilities. Because I see those crossed a lot of times, and there's a lot of friction that people have because the boss said, you're responsible for this, but you're responsible for this, and it doesn't make sense.
Right. No, I would agree. And I see that same thing when I go into clients, right? It's, and you know, it's interesting. Frequently when you go in, right, hey, we have this problem. This is what we need you to fix, right?
Yep.
And inevitably it comes down to communication issues. That seems to be really the number one problem, whether it's they're not giving us the information, they're not giving it to us timely, they're not giving all of the information, whatever it might be, right? It comes down to communication. So inevitably, if we can clarify that, and that's what it is, it's clarification, right? Helping them, giving them some instruments to use going forward, et cetera. We end up ahead of the game, right? We're better off than we were a month ago or 2 months ago or 6 months ago, whatever it might be.
Right. You start spinning that flywheel and get that momentum going, and then people get more positive. So they give you a little bit of grace, right? They're like, well, I'll put up with this weird thing that you're doing. I don't believe in it, but I'm willing to give you a little bit. And then as that momentum builds, they're willing to give you more and more, and you're building faster and faster.
Yeah.
There's an old Middle Eastern proverb that a story that these people are building this tower to heaven, and the God comes in and he confuses their language, and he says, if these people keep speaking to each other, if they keep smoothly communicating to the other, there's nothing they're going to be able to not do. And this tower is a bad tower, so he confuses their language. And the power of communication is so prevalent, so prevalent. Well, what are you looking for in 2025? So, I know that it's just mid-year, but hint, hint, it's actually not mid-year, right? We're 3/4 of the way through.
Fall is here.
Fall is here. That means if you're not 75% done with your yearly goals, you're behind. So what would so somebody's here listening right now, they're that go-getter. They're the person that says, hey, I listen for tools that work. I'm going to go do something. What is something they can do to make sure that this year closes out well and that 2025 is a success?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. So this time of year, a lot of times I'll have, I have a goals and vision workshop that I do with clients, right? Companies, organizations, not-for-profits, because they're planning for 2025 for the next year. So we do a goals and vision workshop or vision and goals. Usually it's a full day. We talk about, let's define or refine your vision, and then let's figure out some realistic, attainable goals that you can work toward to do that. And that's generally a small to medium-sized business in the area locally. I also do with individuals, whether it be a realtor, a financial advisor, insurance person, whoever it might be, who's trying to figure out what do they want next year? What's their future going to look like? What do they want to do? And the same thing, that format's a little bit different in that we do 3 one-hour sessions, generally 1 hour to 90 minutes, 3 weeks in a row. So we give some breathing time in between to think about some goals and how we might achieve them and accountability, et cetera. So a little different format, but goals and vision this time of year is significant. I'm doing a leadership retreat in November, actually, with a local company, and super excited about that. They've got a lot of change coming, and that'll be fun to do.
Yeah, and I think we all have a lot of change. 2025 is, we have a political season shift. I used to be in the defense industry, and every election cycle fundamentally changed our cost structure. And this year's inflation's been good, but the last couple of years it's shot up. So I think that people are looking at layoffs, people are looking at tightening the belt. It's a season of change, and so getting ahead of those goals. Now, why do you think people don't focus on goals? I know that I do some strategic planning work as well, and anything that you do that doesn't involve starting with goals is kind of not the best. I'll soften the blow a little bit there, but as a leader, if you don't have a vision, your folks don't know what you want from them, right? So what do you think holds people back from sitting down seriously and doing goals and values work?
I think that's a great question. I think for some leaders, some organizations, some clients, they are so busy putting out fires that their day is consumed, or and they look back at the week or the month or the quarter and say, what happened, what was going on. And that's all the more reason they need to have a vision and have goals clearly defined, right? Because if they're not, they get muddied along the way. They really do. And different people interpret them differently. So it's really critical that we get the team all on the same page at the same time, clearly defined, spelled out, so everybody knows where we're headed and what we're doing. And that's part of this workshop. That's what we try to do, is to say, okay, let's make sure we can this button down before we walk out the door today.
Yeah, I think that people don't realize you can do that, which is, I have this goal up here and I can tree it all the way down to this lowest person. And I think that people are like, well, what's the point of making goals? The most common goal I hear is, I want to see a 20% revenue bump this year. Like, we want to increase our revenue or decrease costs, which is very similar phrasing. But folks don't realize that trees down from the top to something very, very practical that the individual line worker can understand. And sometimes you just need somebody to help with that.
Yeah. And if they don't understand how their role fits into the big picture, you're doing a disservice to them and to the organization of the company, right? They've got to see how they fit in and what their purpose is in that.
This comes up the most for me with nonprofits. So I go into a nonprofit, I offer some leadership work, I start working with them, and one of the very first things they say is, well, we're different because we're a nonprofit and we're full of volunteers. And what I always remind them is, as it turns out, for-profit companies are full of volunteers as well. I've paid lots of people who didn't do their job. But the nonprofits, because there's no money involved and there's no like, well, you have my paycheck. When you, as the leader in the nonprofit, fail to take the mission and break it down to the individual, they just stop volunteering. Whereas at work, they also stop volunteering, but they keep doing some of the functions. So they're kind of zombies, right? They're like, they're like, don't ask questions, man. It's just the process. I know it's dumb. And those type of phrases, yeah, I love what you said. You got to tree it down from the top and bring it down to that practical level.
Absolutely. And the not-for-profits or nonprofits, right? There may not be profit, but there's a budget, right?
Yeah, there's a budget and there's an impact.
And what's that? I'm sorry.
There's an impact.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's where I was going to go, is like, those dollars, people are looking as to how they're spent and what the outcomes are, what the results are, et cetera. So, and I hear the same thing when I go into a not-for-profit or nonprofit situation. It's like, well, we're different. Yes, you are, but no, you really aren't. Right.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I'm not picking on them, because I know that the budgets can seem super constrained to a nonprofit. But the truth is, in a for-profit, the budgets are super constrained. You have a lot of money flowing, but if Fred decides to not do his line work correctly and we scrap 10 parts, that's the profit because when you scrap a part, you don't lose the profit of the part, you lose the entire cost, right? And
absolutely.
If you're running a 10%, I realize I'm getting into numbers here. I apologize to the audience.
No.
If you're running a 10% margin company, that is to say you're making 10% and you scrap one part, you got to make 10 to get back to zero. Yeah. So the individuals knowing exactly where the company is going and how that connects to them, that's your job as a leader, to communicate that smoothly.
Yeah.
I call it, you got to change people's identity. You're either a guy that plays the guitar in my band, or you're part of the band, right? And you got to help folks make that shift. Well, cool. Okay. So we've talked about leadership. We've talked about John Gordon. We've talked about Maxwell. We've talked about some of the amazing results that you're getting for your clients. I don't think that I've pulled the thread. Who do you work with? Like, what size company? Obviously Italian companies. What other companies?
Yeah, no, it has been small to medium-sized businesses. And it's been a spectrum of everything, whether it's hospitality, whether it's a service industry group, banking, manufacturing. It's been a hodgepodge. And I think part of that is my experience has been a hodgepodge over 38 years. I had 5 major employers in the 38 years, but a mix of them, right? State government, et cetera. So it's been a hodgepodge, but generally small to medium-sized businesses is the ideal client for me.
So that's like, how small is small for you? Is like 3 people, a 3-people organization?
Small is as small as 3 people.
Okay. 5, 10, 15?
Yes, yeah, definitely.
And how
Major
hot?
hotels, uh,
Major hotels.
yeah, in the marketplace, right, with a lot of employees, but they're part of a chain or a franchise operation, but owned and operated by a local entity, for example.
I like that. I like that you're bringing that up because leadership is not something that you can franchise, right? Leadership is something that you, the individual manager, leader at the organization, really need. So even if you have a franchise, you need leadership work. Not that came across quite accusatory. I'm not
No,
saying
no,
that I'm not saying you're bad at it, but you're right. I'm saying leading people is an individual sport, right? That's something
yeah,
that you have to learn and coach, and that's what's going to make the difference between your franchise succeeding and your franchise failing. Is not the franchise work; it's the people work.
absolutely, absolutely. And I tell folks all the time, leadership was never intended to be a solo journey, right? If you're out there
That's
trying to
good.
do it by yourself, you're in trouble. You're going to screw up. You're going to have some problems and challenges that you may never overcome, right? It's all about team. It's about having a coach, building on each other and learning from each other. It really is. And that's why it's so critical to me. It's so important. Got to help spread that.
Yeah, I love that you brought that up because we live in a world, our loneliness, our depression and loneliness rates are higher than they've ever been, even though we're more connected via social media than we've ever been. But no, the truth of the matter is, you're going to spend most of your life with the people that you work with. Most of your waking life is with the people you work with. And so that to build a team where that's healthy and engaging and fun, and to be a part of a team where that's healthy, engaging, and fun is, I used to, when I was working at the larger corporations, um, somebody eventually would bring up work-life balance. And I would say to them, "Are you alive at work?" And they would say, "Yes." And I was like, "Okay, then we need to reframe the conversation from work-life balance to how do we live while we're at work? Like, I want you to be alive and encouraged and empowered here at work." um, all right. Well, I tell you what, we're kind of running to the end of the show here. I'm going to turn the mic over to you. What are some of your best lessons learned, or you're talking to a new leader, or you're talking to an HR person, or maybe just a client? Give me some Paul wisdom here as we close out the show.
Yeah, one of the things I tell clients all the time is, your team is going to make you or break you, so to speak. And there are gems on your team. You hired them, promoted them, developed them at one point or another. Don't forget the why, right? That's really what you have to do, is look at why that happened or why that occurred, and help that person become even better, right? Your job never stops, right? As a leader, you're developing hopefully future leaders, helping them grow, helping them be more than they are now, and helping contribute to the organization's success, whether that's financially or whatever it might be, a not-for-profit in impact with clients, whatever it might be. So, first impressions is another thing that gets me. People make these quick decisions about people, and I think sometimes we have to dial that back and slow down a little bit, right? That little snippet we saw on LinkedIn doesn't define them. It doesn't make them who they are. We've got to really dig deeper and get to know them, have a relationship with that person, right? That's what it comes down to. And then you can make reasonable decisions.
I love it. I love it. Well, folks, thank you so much, Paul, for being on the show. If you want to get in touch with Paul, if you are a small business, an individual, like an HR manager, especially, if you're like, "Hey, look, I recognize from this conversation that I'm ready to go pro. I'm ready to get a coach and go pro." I think Paul Boyles is your guy. He's been fantastic. We kind of met on a whim, and I've super
Yeah.
loved the relationship ever since. As you can see, he's got the experience. He's got the international experience. Everybody that he's worked with is reaching back out to him. So my encouragement to you is to reach out to Paul and just have a conversation and see if he can help you with your goals and values. This so that 2025 is your best year ever. Paul, how can they get a hold of you?
Best way is either through LinkedIn, DM me, right? Or my email is execcoach, EXECCOACH at paulboyles.com. And my phone number is 865-333-1821.
I
Any
love
one
that.
of those three will do it.
Following John Gordon's habit there of actually reaching out to customers. I love it. So reach out to Paul, have a conversation with him, schedule yourself a goals and value session so that your 2025 is amazing. And with that, we are out.